avian influenza and our pets. I'm Dr. Forbes. I'm a small animal veterinarian, and I'd like to share with you what we know and what we don't know. I have a playlist with other videos about H5N1 as well. Please share this information. This is really important and time sensitive. First, there are at least 33 cats in this country who have tested positive for H5N1. Please keep in mind that testing is optional, so there's no mandatory requirement once a cat is symptomatic to test. So I don't know how accurate a reflection this is on the actual numbers, but that's what we have so far. There are a variety of mammals who have been infected, including mice, a desert cottontail, and opossums, raccoons, cats. We don't have dogs in the US yet. I'm going to show you the map, and of course all of these links will be in my link tree so you can look at this information yourself. Please keep in mind that, for example, the mouse in Colorado is a little yellow star. There's one yellow star. There's actually over 20 reported cases of a mouse being positive for H5N1, but just one little star because it represents the county in which it was found. So the map with the symbols does not reflect the number of animals testing positive. Exposure to the virus that can lead to an infection includes poultry on a farm, wild birds who have been infected and ingested, dairy cattle, raw milk, or raw meat. That would also include raw eggs potentially. At this time, the safest thing to do is to not feed pets raw meat, raw milk, or raw eggs. The virus tends to have an affinity for cats, and they do not do well. The only other species that's been studied to do worse than cats is ferrets. So cats right now have a 67% mortality rate. I don't know how accurate that's actually going to be in the long run once we test more cats. And ferrets in a laboratory setting had a 100% fatality rate. Dogs can still contract H5N1, but they seem not to get as sick as the cats and ferrets. Questions from my previous video. Is it safe to feed canned and kibble food? If the canned and kibble food is cooked, then yes, absolutely, that is considered to be safe. If that kibble is coated with raw, I would avoid those products. Is it safe to feed raw meat from a commercially prepared raw diet? My suggestion right now as a veterinarian would be to avoid all raw meat, raw milk, and raw eggs. There are companies that make their food in a way that the bone is ground into a very fine substance so that you could theoretically cook that food to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit so that it would be safe to consume. It is best to keep indoor cats inside. If you let your cat out for recreational purposes, now is not the time to do that. When your dogs go outside, please try to avoid dead birds or any contact with wild birds. Is it safe to take my cat to an animal hospital for care? I would ask your animal hospital what their protocol is for screening patients right now, how they handle cats with upper respiratory infections, and what protocols they're taking to ensure that patients are safe. For example, at my hospital, we screen everybody to know whether or not they're feeding raw, whether the cat is indoor, outdoor, and if there are respiratory or neurologic signs. If there are, then we are going to take measures to ensure that those patients are seen at a different time when others are not in the hospital, come in a different entrance, and in many cases, we might refer them to a hospital who has a better isolation ability than we do because we don't have an isolation ward with a separate ventilation system. These are all things to ask your vet so that you feel more comfortable going in with your cat and dog, but right now the focus is really on cats, so they can continue to get the care they need. That's really important. Can cats give it to other cats? The short answer is yes. I have a study linked in my link tree. You can read it for yourself, but there has been proof that transmission from cat to cat can occur. What about products that are HPP processed? The answer is we simply don't know. There are studies that have shown that at certain temperatures for a certain duration of time and under certain pressure, the H5N1 virus can be essentially effectively inactivated. The problem is that those studies are done on different substances and different sizes of particles than what is happening in the real world with diets being processed. So unfortunately, we just don't know the answer to this. We do not have enough information yet. And the most recent recall of a commercially available raw food, that food was HPP processed, and still it had avian influenza in it. Hopefully that will give us some insight into what happens with that processing and if there is a safe protocol. Freeze-dried treats. If the food is raw, freeze-dried, freeze drying does absolutely nothing to destroy the pathogens. I have a video about that in my playlist. Actually, freeze drying was used originally to preserve viruses to study them for vaccines. So freeze drying will not eliminate pathogens. If your pet only does well on one particular raw food, I would suggest talking to your veterinarian about options or talking to the company you buy your raw food from to see if that is a product that you can cook. Again, to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. In terms of coming in and out of the house, like taking your shoes off or having a dog that goes in and out who lives with a cat, that's the situation I find myself in. I am going to clean my dog's feet, but I always do that. I always just wipe them off before he comes inside. And I think that's the best we can do at this point. Hopefully, you can avoid contact with birds and or bird droppings when they are outside. You can only do your best. In terms of the things that you can control, if you can take your shoes off before you come into the house, why not? There's a lot of things you could bring in on your shoes that would be good to avoid. This is a rapidly evolving situation, and this is bigger than just your individual household and your cat. The concern is that cats could serve as a mixing vessel for the H5N1 virus to adapt to humans and better transmit to humans and between humans. So this is a public health issue.